Hello, everybody. Back here with Harry, and we today are going to take you guys through a mock case interview. As discussed in our previous video, we talked about different styles of cases, and today we're going to take you through an interviewee-led case in which the interviewee, me, is going to be leading a discussion that is started and prompted by our interviewer, Harry. So hopefully this is helpful and gives you an introduction to what these kind of case interviews are going to be like. So without further ado, Harry, if you want to kick us off.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. So normally a case interview would probably start with one or two behavioral questions just to kind of break the ice for the interviewer to get to know you. For this one, we're going to dive right into the case just so you get an understanding of how exactly a case is structured and how exactly a case looks like in real time. So without further ado, I'm diving into it. All right, Will, great to meet you.
And nice to meet you as well.
Here's our prompt today for the case that we're going to look at. And all right, let's get started. So our client is the owner of a gas station between towns A and B, 10 miles to each town between A and B. He's wondering if it would make sense to add a convenience store to the gas station.
Okay, so just to make sure that I have our prompt correct here, today our client is the owner of a gas station. This gas station lies lies between towns A and B, and it's 10 miles to each of those towns. And our client is interested in knowing if they should open up a convenience store in addition to their gas station to contribute to their business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. So just before we start, I have a couple of clarifying questions, I think, that'll help me sort of frame what I would like to go through with this case. So when you say the client wants to know if this would make sense, what are the criteria for this project for opening this convenience store and making sense?
Yeah, good question. There's kind of three main considerations that our client is concerned with. Number one, making a profit, contributing to the bottom line. Number two, having a better chance to kind of hold off new competitors from entering the market. And three, looking at diversifying their income and their streams of revenue.
Got it. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, and just so I sort of have an idea for what else is going on in this scenario, is there any other information we have right now on just sort of the general market, how many other competitors there are, or anything like that?
Yeah, so the general market, there's no other gas stations in town A or town B. Okay. And you can assume that for the purposes of this case that the current customer base is only residents of town A and town B. There's no other customers.
Okay. All right, nobody in between, no stragglers. Got it. Okay, great. And then just one last question. Just before we jump into the rest of what I'd like to look at, I was wondering if we know anything right now about the general profitability or revenue structure of our gas station.
Yeah, good question. So of the two services that we offer, we currently have gas and also car washes. So for the gas sales make up 75% of the revenue and 10% of the profit margin. And then the car washes that we offer make up 25% of the revenue and 20% of the profit margin.
Got it. You said 20% of the profit margin there?
20% of the profit margin. Yeah, let me know if you want me to read that again.
No, that's good.
Awesome.
Okay, so just so I have that clear, gas makes up 75% of the revenue with 10% profit margin, and car washes, which it's good to know they offer, makes up 25% of the revenue and 20% of the profit margin.
Correct.
Great. Okay, well, if you just give me a couple minutes here, I'm going to brainstorm some ideas and come up with a little roadmap for how I'd like to tackle this, and then we can jump in.
Of course. Take it away.
Thanks.
Will, also quick clarification on
Hmm.
the information I provided regarding the profit margin. I think I
Yes.
as like gas is 10% of the profit margin. Really, what that is I meant for the gas sector, the profit margin is 10%, and then for
Got
car
it.
wash, the profit margin is 20%. It's not
That makes
10%.
sense. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Thank you. Okay, that's great. So I think I've got a general roadmap for how I'd like to proceed. Normally, I'd try to show you what I've written out here, but I think this video might not be legible. So I'll load these notes up later. But I'll just sort of take you through my approach to how I think we can go about solving this problem and giving our clients an answer.
Great.
And it hinges on sort of a three-pronged approach here. So first of all, I think that the main categories that I think we'd like to look at today are going to be first the profitability, and that has to do with the gas station and the potential convenience store. So we'll talk about that in a second. Then I think we want to look at the market as a whole and potential competitors, as well as any kind of existing competitors and what we might think a competitor might look like. And then additionally, the third thing, and one of the most important things, is just going to be looking at this gas station and our clients' capacity to do this. Do they have the core competencies available and like the management available to take on this project? So just a brief overview of all three of those things first. So profitability, I think, is going to be the main driver. I think, you mentioned that in the introduction, that is kind of the main criteria for wanting to take on this project. So first of all, with profitability, we want to look at the gas station's current profitability, how they currently are performing, and looking at sort of trying to find their profitability on a yearly basis as of now. So, we want to look at the market size that they're capturing between these two towns, and then how they're performing on that. And then additionally, in terms of profitability, we want to look forward to seeing what the profitability might look like if they did take on this convenience store, how that would, affect their current profitability as, a business, and how it could expand that. So again, we want to look at sort of the market size and who they might be attracting, how that would increase their revenues, and how it also would affect their costs. Any additional costs that they're going to incur by taking on this new business within their business. So then moving on to this second idea of the market and the competition, I think one major consideration going into this, sort of as our client has suggested, is thinking about, first of all, if there's a market for a convenience store in addition to this gas station. And then additionally, what competitors might look like, and if there already are existing competitors, and if there aren't, how this might induce some competition. Because once you open up one convenience store, what's to say there won't be 15 convenience stores opening up? And then finally, I think we just need to consider the core competencies and the ability of our client to actually take on this project. That might look just like a management decision, and whether or not they're ready to take on any kind of like supply chain considerations, or just managing a different type of store as opposed to just managing a gas station. So making sure that that our client would actually be capable of handling this kind of profit. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I'd like to approach this case.
Great. Sounds good. I like that.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, and unless you've got any other suggestion, I think it'd be great to start on the profitability end, because like I said, I think that's going to be the most important driver here. And I'd love to look at the gas station's current profitability, if you think that's possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So I think the first, like I said, sort of in the introduction, I think like the first thing that we want to look at is the market size, sort of like who our customer is currently attracting and what they're spending at our gas station. So if you just give me a second, I'd love to come up with like a little formula to help us to organize my thoughts on how we could estimate the market size, and then we can kind of jump in from there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great. So in estimating our customer base, so the market, I think the first thing we want to consider is, first of all, we want to, I like to think of this on a town by town basis, because then we can just find our total market size and multiply it by 2. But basically, I think we want to think about the number of people in each town, how many of those people own a car, because presumably, maybe not everybody actually drives. We're not concerned about the people that aren't buying gas.
Sure.
And then on top of that, the percentage of those people that are actually our own customers or our clients' customers, as opposed to, going elsewhere for gas, wherever that might be. So I know we have 1,000 people in each town. I believe you gave me that at the beginning. Or did you? I think you did, yeah.
I don't know. Yes. Okay. We do have 1,000 people in each town.
Great. 1,000 people in each town. I was just making sure I wasn't making that number up. So 1,000 people in each town. Do we know what percentage of people own a car? I'd have to imagine it'd be pretty high, but not everybody. Somewhere in the 90% maybe, or less than that.
So we do have that number. It's 80% of the population owns a car.
Got it. 80% owns a car. And then, okay, that's great to know. And then, do we know how many of those people are actually coming to us for gas as opposed to elsewhere?
Yeah, 50% of those car owners get gas from our client.
Okay, got it. All right, it's good to know. Okay, so if we take those 1,000 customers and we multiply it by the 80% that actually own a car, that gives us 800 customers with a car. And we know 50% of those actually come to us. So this gives us 400 people in each town that have a car that are coming to us. So, and that of course it applies to both towns. I'm assuming both towns are about uniform. Is that right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, great. So given that, we know that we have about 800 customers.
Okay, perfect.
So with those 800 customers, I think the next thing we're going to want to consider is how often they are spending money with us and how much money they spend every time they come, and sort of how basically, like, we want to think about the frequency that they're buying and their total spend on average. So do we know how often these 800 customers are visiting us?
So in terms of how often they visit us, you can say that, let's just say they visit us on average once a week. And then
just once a week?
Yeah, and you can round down, in a given year, since we're looking at this on a yearly basis, you can round that down to 50 weeks in the year.
Okay, great. So we can assume that if we're going to calculate our revenue and then our profit on a yearly basis, we've got 800 customers and each of them have 50 visits in a year, right? And then do we have any information on their spending habits? Do we know, like, how often they're getting car washes versus how often they're getting gas? Do we know just how often, like, the average purchase amount over the course of the year? Any of that?
Yeah. I can tell you that they spend $50 on average on each visit.
Okay, great. So they're spending $50 on average. Okay. And are they always coming to us for their gas?
Good catch. No, they only make 40% of their total gas purchases at our station.
Got it. Okay, I guess that makes sense, given that, the other 800 people in the 2 towns go somewhere else for gas. So I guess, our customers also have the option to go somewhere else. Okay, sure. That makes great sense. So we can take these numbers and I can do some quick mental math here, and we'll get total revenue for the year by taking our 800 customers, multiplying it by the $50 they spend on average every time they come in, and then multiplying it by the 50 times a year that they get gas, but of course the 40% of those times that they actually come to us. So we know that because they're coming to us 40% of the time, that means their total visits aren't 50 times a year, but more like 20 times a year. So each customer is visiting us 20 times a year and they're spending $50. So each customer's total spend is going to be, if I'm doing this math correctly, 20 times 50 being $1,000. I think that sounds right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a while since I've done mental math. So if each customer is spending about $1,000 at our gas station in a given year, and we have 800 customers, that's going to give us a total of $800,000 in revenue.
Yep, that's correct.
Great. So with that 800K in revenue, and just to be clear on that spend, that's average spend across car wash and gas purchases?
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. So in terms of figuring out our profitability on a yearly basis, we're going to want to, because we talked at the beginning about the different profit structures, we're going to want to split that 800K up into the 25% car wash purchases and the 75% of gas purchases. So they're going to spend 200K a year on car washes and 600K on gas purchases. And with our given profit margins of 20% and 10%, we're going to bring in, if I'm doing the correct math, $40,000 yearly in profit on car washes and $60,000 yearly on gas, which brings us to total profitability of $100,000 yearly. Does that sound about right?
Yep. So that is correct. That's the total profit that we have for our current operating structure.
Great. That's great to know. Clearly, that's pretty strong profitability for towns with such small towns, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's great. But I think that's all we need to know about our current profitability. So I think the next logical step would be to think about the profitability of the convenience store, of adding a convenience store. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, I like that as the next step.
Okay, great. So if you just give me a second, I'm going to lay out another sort of way of approaching this next part. I think it'll be pretty similar.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I think we can start with, and determine the profitability of the convenience store. We're going to want to look at our revenue, and then we're going to look at the costs associated with operating that convenience store, unless we have some kind of profit margin information available, although I can't imagine we do, given that we haven't started operating this convenience store, do we?
We do have some information on the cost structure, if that's what you're
okay. Oh, well, I mean, I'd love some cost structure information. Yeah, that'd be great. So what do we have anticipated costs?
So yeah, so in terms of recurring costs that we're anticipating for the convenience store, we're expecting $75,000 in labor per year.
Okay.
$5,000 per month in utilities, and then we're thinking our cost of goods sold is going to be 50% of our revenue.
Got it. Okay, great. And so you said $75,000 a year in labor, $5,000 a month in utilities, which comes out to 5,000 by 12 is 60,000 a year in utilities, and then our cost of goods sold would be 50% of our revenue, is what you said.
Yep.
Great. So I guess the next logical step would be to look at our revenue. So first, I think we want to think about who buys it, or who's going to buy from our convenience store. So sort of sizing our market again, and then thinking about our customers' average spend at our convenience store. So first of all, do we have any estimates for how our market size might change? I'd have to guess that the customers that are already buying gas from us are going to spend at the convenience store as well, because I know I go into convenience stores and buy Gatorade at gas stations. So I'd have to imagine they'd be buying from us. Do we know anything about, is there potential that we might be scraping into the other market? Those that weren't?
So in terms of the people who aren't currently customers, we actually think that 50% of the town population who currently are not customers of our gas station, they'll spend $5 per week at the convenience store.
Okay.
And this is not just the 80% car owners. This is the remaining 1,200 non-customers.
Okay. So 600 of them, being 50%, would spend $5 a week?
Yep.
Okay. So just writing that out, we're looking at, so from our our non-gas customers,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at 1,200 customers who will buy $5 a week. And can we assume 50 weeks again?
Mm-hmm.
And great, so multiply that by 50 weeks. And I guess we need to be clear. Are they going anywhere else for their convenience store needs, or are they going to spend that $5 every week for the full 50 weeks?
We can assume that $5 per week is going to be every single week at our convenience store.
Great. So what about our 800 current customers that we already have?
So our current gasoline customers, if you will, we can assume that they're going to spend an additional $20 at the convenience store per purchase, but they're not going to increase the frequency of their purchases.
Got it. So, okay, great. So, and we figured out last time that they make 20 purchases per year at our gas station because we took their 40% frequency and multiplied it by the 50 times a year. Does that sound about right?
Yep, that's right.
So we know those 800 customers are going to spend $20 additional dollars on their 20 purchases.
Mm-hmm.
So for our gas customers, we're looking at revenue of 800 customers times $20 times the 20 purchases. So working through that math here, we're looking at, I want to say 320,000 in yearly revenue from our current gas customers. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Great. And then going back to our non-gas customers, with 600 of them buying $5 every week, so 50 times in a year, I believe we are looking at 150,000.
Yep, that's right.
6 times 5 times 5. Yeah, okay. 150,000 per year, bringing our total yearly revenue up to 470,000.
Yep, that's correct.
If I did that math correct. Great. So with that, I believe we can go ahead and calculate our profit, being our revenue minus our costs. So our profit's going to be that 470,000 minus first the 75,000 in labor costs, plus the 60,000 a year in utilities, plus 50% of that 470,000 in cost of goods sold, which would be 235,000.
That's right.
So if I can add and subtract correctly here, it's looking like it would be 305, 310, 370. So our total costs come out to $370,000 per year. Total revenue being 470,000, giving us total profit of our convenience store of $100,000 per year. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we know our profit margin from our gas in our car wash, and we also have this if we were to open up the convenience stores. So that's good information.
So I guess the next question there would just be, if it's going to make $100,000 yearly, what would be the upfront investment? And I guess that'd be another consideration as we go to look to open that. Yeah,
exactly. And okay, so we've talked a bit about like kind of the math behind this. And I like your point about the upfront investment costs. That's a good thing to think about. Maybe kind of switching gears a little bit to, we've thought about kind of the pricing here, but how about qualitatively? What are kind of some of the things that we should be considering in this decision? So our client wants us to provide a list of kind of factors to consider when opening this new convenience store, kind of both short-term and long-term. What are some of the things that you'd tell them?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you don't mind, I'd love to brainstorm some ideas before I just start spitballing.
Yeah, of course.
All right, sounds good. Okay, great. So I've got a couple things that I think are that would form a good list of what I think our clients should consider outside of just the pure, bare bones numbers.
Mhm.
And so a little more qualitatively, I think like the things that I've come up with break out into like three main categories, and they can be kind of tied back to what we discussed at the beginning.
Mhm.
First of those categories is going to be our customers, thinking about them. The second being competitors, and the third being our own capabilities.
Mhm.
So first of all, in terms of our customers, obviously, like in any business, like the customer has to be our very first consideration, and ultimately, like that's who we're serving. So we can think of two types of customers, just like we just discussed in this in looking at like the potential profitability of this convenience store. We can think of our current customers who are buying gas and getting car washes from us, and then our potential new customers. So
Okay.
thinking of our current customers, um, on one hand, I think one thing to consider that would be attractive to them would be, these new offerings. Our current customers might, be delighted that they, like me, can now walk in while they're pumping gas and grab like, a, a can of Coke and some Skittles. Nothing picks you up while you're on the road like a can of Coke and some Skittles. So I think that would be, definitely a plus for them. But then additionally, I think the risk associated with that would be that right now you've got a very committed, like a small-ish cohort of customers.
Mhm.
By involving new customers, your current customers might suffer from, longer lines, more foot traffic to this gas station and to the convenience store that they'd like to be visiting. And that might be, something that our current customers don't like and could potentially drive down our gas profits,
Mhm.
and car wash profits. So something to consider there. But then in terms of new customers, I think one positive potential with our new customers would be the possibility for us to convert some of them to gas. So, just roping in more new customers, which would be great, and build their customer loyalty. So I think there's a lot of strong possibilities with them.
Mhm.
And then moving over to our competitors, I think anytime you move into a new market, you need to think about how your entry to the market is going to might affect the current competition. As of now, it doesn't seem like there's much competition for these convenience stores. And so by becoming the only convenience store, becoming like this main convenience store that's going to have such great profitability as we discussed, there's got to be fear of new entrants.
Mhm.
It seems like, it seems like if this is doable for our gas station, then other people could open up convenience stores, and all of a sudden you could, like I said earlier, you could be talking about, instead of just being the sole convenience store, having like 15 in between the two towns, which could be pretty dangerous and could make could all of a sudden make this not only not profitable but really like hurt our bottom line, our client's bottom line.
Mhm.
And then finally, in terms of capabilities, I just want to circle back to this idea that we need to make sure that our client has the management experience necessary to take on this kind of venture. I think convenience store operations are going to be distinctly different than the retail experience that you have with gas and car wash, where they're going to need more. There's going to have to be more of an emphasis on customer service for sure, because you need people working in the convenience store to help assist people. It's going to be a completely different supply chain. You're not just buying tanks of oil anymore. We're talking about stocking a store with all kinds of snacks and stuff like that, and other convenience store goods, which might just be just supply chains that our customer is going to have to start to build connections in. And we just have to consider like these things as well as other like potential management challenges. Um, but overall, yeah, I think those are like some main things that they could consider in this.
A very strong list, and it's good that you made this up right now because, surprise, our client actually just walked into the room and wants to hear what your recommendation is. So what can you hit? What can you hit him with?
Okay, great. Well, seeing as our client has just walked in, I'm not going to take any time here to organize my thoughts, but um, you know, I think I personally do not think that adding this convenience store to the gas station is a good idea. So my gut reaction is to say no. I don't think it's a great idea, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I do think that like today that as we walk through this case, we realized that the profitability of this convenience store could be really good. It could equal the current profitability of our gas station. It could take our client's profits from 100,000 to 200,000, which would be obviously a great thing. But I can't get over the potential that there is for other competition to enter the market. And I think that's really the biggest risk. I think with the entrance of one convenience store, you're going to induce competition that could potentially very heavily hurt the bottom line. Additionally, we didn't get into what this upfront investment might be just to build the convenience store and to have this kind of offering, because it's going to be drastically different than what you might have at the gas station already. And so just putting in a brick and mortar store might be more than our client can handle. And so my recommendation is that they don't go through with it, and instead really focus on, and so instead of pivoting away from this convenience store idea, really focus on trying to capture more market share for their gasoline market, and particularly for their car washes, which are heavily profitable for them at the moment. So any way that they can capture more of the market that way, I think that's a safer way forward. And maybe in the future, with stronger developments in that area and a stronger base, they could then support such a venture.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Will.
All right, thanks so much.
All right.
All right, man.